May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Please join with me in singing our first hymn, number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Please stand as you are able.
We come to this place bearing the gift of ourselves. And one of our weekly offerings is the opportunity to come forth and briefly state something that is of joy or concern to us. If you have a joy or concern, please step forward, light a candle, let us know who you are.
I'm Brooks Jones. I'm lighting this candle for Steve. He turned 39 on Wednesday.
I'm Janet Joyner, and many of you remember Sarah Lou Bradley, a former member of this fellowship, and her brother passed away this past week, and so I was able to meet with her, and she asked to be remembered to everyone in the fellowship. So.
Good morning, Steve Lintner. 3 real quick joys. First, Robert has had 2 full weeks now of health. in spite of the repeated ear infections we've had since he was a year old. So we're really tickled and hope that that continues. Another one is a belated announcement. In conversations I've had with several of you, I've shared with you how living in Pilot Mountain, it's difficult to juggle schedules and get here for the different events, not just on Sunday morning. Well, Santa Claus on Christmas gave us a good condition used truck just for the cost of taxes and tags, which was within our budget. Very wonderful and surprising deal, but it was much needed, so we're tickled about that. And the other one, I'm really good at comparing my insides to other people's outsides, and I know that doesn't make me unique. I waited until yesterday to decide to come to the Canvas dinner because I'm a person of modest means. I'm just barely middle class income scale, and I've always used that to keep myself separate to a little bit from the fellowship. Well, I came last night, had a wonderful time, and nobody made me feel like I didn't belong because of my income level.
Ray's making me do all the talking.
I'll explain why.
He'll tell why. All right, we're lighting 2 candles for 2 sons that died 2 years ago and can't be with us. But we are celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary. So he has something to say now.
Well, my vocal cords are under repair, so I can't talk a whole lot. I would like our immediate family that's here to stand, please. Charlie, somehow I wanted to use the words, "We begat" some of those.
That's appropriate. That's a polite company way to say it.
Although Charlie, that's only half the begats.
Yeah,
Really.
some of them couldn't be here.
I'm Caroline Davenport Ursoff, and I'm lighting 1 candle for a multiplicity of concerns. I'm a person who works with young babies who have disabilities. I have the privilege of going into homes, and I work with the Hispanic community entirely now. And the things I'm beginning to see, or have been seeing, have just started to weigh on me a lot. Well, the candle is lit for Rosa, a 16-year-old older sister who was raped and now has a 5-pound little premature baby herself. She needs new clothes for her little girl. She doesn't have any. There are like 9 or 10 children in the family. I'm lighting this for the family. You may have seen in the paper a couple of weeks ago, their house was inundated by broken pipes, and they were still living in it the next week because they were still there. They didn't. The Hispanic community is also suffering from lack of job opportunities. They get the short end of the stick in a lot of ways, and I'm just wanted to voice that concern.
Good morning. I'm Al Sutton. I missed last week, and I want to light this candle in celebration of the birth of my nephew's daughter, Jacqueline Elizabeth McFarland. I hope he enjoys spoiling his daughter like I spoil my daughter.
I'm Christy Jones, and this is my 5th Sunday attending the fellowship. And I have a concern today for my family. My father was downsized from his job last summer after 35 years with his company. And due to a need to work, he's had to take a temporary assignment out of town. So my mom has all the burdens of the household. She has a full-time job. They still have 2 kids at home. It's been really hard for her. This past week, my dad was in the building next door to West Pharmaceuticals in Kinston when the explosion happened, and despite the fact that he's never been very forthcoming with his emotions or his feelings or anything. It's the first time he's ever admitted to us that he was afraid of anything. And so now more than ever, I just feel the real needs for him to find a permanent position and to be able to come home and be with his family.
I'm Shirley Goodman, and I'm lighting this candle for my son-in-law who has had a recurrence of his cancer and has gone through chemotherapy again, but is once again in the hospital. And for my dear next-door neighbor who is also they found another spot on her lung.
I'm Gemma Hackbarth. I'm visiting from Chapel Hill this weekend, and I have two joys. First joy is I made the Dean's List again, so that made me really happy. And the second joy is that for about 2 weeks at school, I've been in kind of this terrible funk, and I came home because I wanted to talk to my mother, and I always forget when I'm away at school how incredibly wise she is. So I know she's not here because she's back with the seniors, but I'm sure all of you will tell her that I said nice things about her.
I lit a candle for the 7 lives that were lost yesterday. And I want to read you something in our hymnal. Born of the sun, they traveled a short while towards the sun and left the vivid air signed with their honor.
I'm Diane Spa, and I usually stand up in January and remember 2 people that were important to me. And last Sunday, for some reason, I think I was feeling a little bit too vulnerable to do that. But in January, I marked the passing of my good friend and Molly's godmother, Jean, who took her own life in 1995. And then also in January, I marked my dad's birthday. It was January 12th, and he would have been 76.
I'm getting over laryngitis, so bear with me. I always get a little nervous, but I'm imagining you all in your underwear right now. Even though I've had better weeks than last week, I have a joy, and that's the care committee and the memorial committee here. And they did a wonderful job last week. And Laura may not know it now, but it was just amazing how easy they made everything and how everything was taken care of. And I've always taken it for granted. I've always sat back there and listened and seen the meetings and like, oh, the care committee, whatever. But it was just wonderful, and that's just a great joy. So thank you.
For these joys and concerns and those that remain unspoken, let us hold them together in a community of silent meditation. May we bless and be blessed. Please join with me in reading the words of offering found in your order of service. We are an inclusive and caring spiritual community. Our wealth is what we share. We are grateful for our wealth, our sharing, and our community.
Please join me in the responsive reading, number 466. Let religion be to us life and joy. Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and right. Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood. Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders. Religion, uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere. Our special music this morning is by the choir. It is The Road Not Taken, the poetry of Robert Frost, set to music by Randall Thompson.
There once was a young girl who was sent to Sunday school. Her mother placed 2 quarters in her hands, and she said, 1 quarter is for the collection, and 1 quarter is for candy that you can buy on the way home. And so the little girl started skipping off the church, and her arms were swinging, and one of the quarters slipped from her hands and went in a giant arc and towards the end of the block, and it started rolling. And she started chasing it. It went the length of the block, and she had almost caught up to it as it rolled off the curb and into the street. Being a good girl, she stopped and watched for traffic, and then watched helplessly as the coin rolled into the storm drain in front of the church. What a pity. There goes the Lord's quarter. The little girl grew up to be a Unitarian Universalist and stopped the pretense of setting money aside. She stopped believing in religious miracles, except one, that the church would survive without her gift. As she grew up, she found it harder and harder to believe certain stories and doctrine. And she figured that the church was only in it for the money, selling stories to the gullible. She wouldn't be taken in. She quit attending. But eventually she tired of reading the Sunday paper, and the kids got old enough that they wouldn't let her read the Sunday paper, so she wandered into a UU church. And it seemed so perfect. The sermons asked questions rather than giving unsatisfactory answers. She entered into conversations without fear of being condemned as a sinner. And she put her children in RE and had a whole host and a whole community of people helping her to teach her children real values in their life. Everything seemed so different from the church of her youth, except one thing. They still asked for money. She didn't know what to do. She did not value the religious stories of her youth, so she built up a resentment to giving. She enjoyed attending the UU Fellowship, but that resentment still lingered. Then she began to think about what she valued in life. She valued life itself, which required that she provide for the necessities, food, clothing, and shelter. She also valued beauty, so she made sure that her house was beautiful, that her clothes looked right, even if they weren't the latest fashion. She valued the environment and sent money to the Nature Conservancy and took camping vacations. She spent extra money to make sure that her vegetables were organically grown. She valued the arts and bought tickets to the theater and the museum. She looked for ways to enhance her life. She prided herself on being idiosyncratic. Her parents wondered where they went wrong. Her co-workers looked at her strangely whenever she expressed her opinions. And she longed to find a place that she could express herself, where she could let her guard down just for a little while, where people might respect her right to be a little weird, and they might challenge concepts like, does free will really exist? Her house and her food all came with a specific price tag. But the community she found at the UU Fellowship was, in a word, priceless. Priceless. What an interesting word. I mean, literally, priceless should mean without price, therefore free. But normally, priceless means beyond price. A family heirloom may have an actual price at auction, but its symbolic connection with our ancestors makes it priceless. And so it is with this fellowship. The Finance Committee can tell you the cost. There's sheets of paper outlining the budget and some of our costs, and if you pin one of our members of our Finance Committee down, they can go with you over it line by line. You can find out what the salary for the staff is and how we need to bring up our choir director's salary to what other churches pay, how much the mortgage is, and how our furnaces are no longer brand new. But only you can determine the value. Look beyond the cost and to the value. What would Winston-Salem be like if there was no Unitarian Universalist Fellowship? Where would you hang out? Where would you find like-minded people? Where would you discuss the meaning of life? My heart warms when I read a well-reasoned letter to the editor, and more often than not, the signature at the bottom is a member of this fellowship. Without the UUs, the editorial page of this community would be a nonstop exercise in cringing. Jesus called his disciples to be the salt of the earth, and I don't think that's inclusive enough. I see you as the spice of Winston-Salem. This fellowship enhances the quality of life for many in this community. And what price can be put on that? What we build here is social capital. Social capital, as is defined by Robert Putnam in his book, Bowling Alone, he says, whereas physical capital refers to physical objects and human capital refers to the properties of individuals, social capital refers to the connections among individuals, social networks and the norms of reciprocity and trustworthy that arise from them. In that sense, social capital is closely related to what some have called civic virtue. The difference is that social capital calls attention to the fact that civic virtue is most powerful when embedded in a sense network of reciprocal social relations. A society of many virtuous but isolated individuals is not necessarily rich in social capital. What is the value of a phone call when you are sick? What is the value of joys and concerns? How often do you get the chance to share your feelings? What is the difference between buying a cookbook and reading a recipe and getting a recipe from a friend at a potluck? Recently, I went downtown to see Bowling for Columbine. I know I would have enjoyed this film if I waited to rent it on the video, which I had resigned myself to, feeling that it probably never would come to Winston-Salem. But it did come, and I was overjoyed to see over 20 UUs at the theater. Some even let me cut in to the long line. My joy was further increased by sharing a table with at least 6 of them after the show. Unitarian Universalists celebrate the individual. But the best way to find out who we are and to find ourselves is in the context of our relationship with others. The content of most of my sermons can generally be found in the comparative religion section at Borders. But what I enjoy at Borders is that each time I visit, I bump into one of you. What is the price of a sense of belonging. Think about the things we value in life. The beauty of trees and the mountains outside our windows, the art that hangs on our wall each spring that is more precious because it's made by people you know. A smile, a hug, a knowing glance, giving the feeling of home. What price is hope in a world gone mad? If we can build a community where everyone is respected, perhaps that could spread to the rest of the world. If gays and straights can interweave here, we know it can happen out there. If Democrats and libertarians and communists and Republicans can share freedom and have joyful debate here, there may be hope. We might find a deeper sense of family values based on love and not rigid roles. What if children were taught religious tolerance? That is our gift to the world. This fellowship is a valuable treasure. This past year, our fellowship has had many losses. Several long-term members have moved away, I think in greater numbers, many to be with partners who lived in other parts of the country, to be closer to their family. Kind of joyous occasions for them to move, but still a loss for us. We have lost others to death. These people can't be replaced. Their influence lives on. But also in the past year, around 40 new people have signed the membership book. Now, some of these people will remain members for 20 years. Others may reconsider their decision and drift away after 6 months. What I'm trying to get to is that a congregation is organic, constantly growing and transforming itself and reinventing itself. Pillars of our community may enter a phase where they need to be less active, and people who have been quiet observers for years may step forward into leadership. Canvas time can make some people feel uncomfortable. It's hard to put a dollar amount upon things of real value. Each of us live within the constraints of our budgets. But all of us belong here, rich and poor, young and old, male and female. We give what we can, and all gifts are accepted. We trust that those who have more will make up for those who have less. And let there be no shame or boastfulness, only sharing. Sharing is a primary value of our spiritual community. We feel good when we have done our share, and only we can judge whether we are doing our share. May we share our time and money as freely as we share our opinions. But most of all, may we share our common humanity. May we share justice, equity, and compassion. May we share acceptance of one another. May we do our share in encouraging each other. May we share the freedom to ask why. May we share the many meetings of life. We share our personal sense of right and wrong, and we share in the decisions we make democratically. Both the yea vote and the nay vote are part of the process. And may yeas and nays stay together for the sake of a strong community. May we share the quest for peace, the hope for a world community. May we share justice for all. By sharing, we realize that we are part of an interdependent web. what Martin Luther King Jr. called the network of mutuality. Emerson said that within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related. The choir beautifully sang the words of Robert Frost today, who spoke of two paths diverging in the woods and finding one that made all the difference. This fellowship is a woods containing much more than two paths, many journeys that we have sharing, and sometimes they cross, and sometimes we say, I can't believe that person's a Unitarian Universalist, but I'm glad they're here. Most of all, let us share the spirit of love. Earlier, we sang these words inspired by 1 Corinthians 13. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within, the profit turns strangely thin. May our gifts be freely given and gratefully received. We give to each other. By giving to something larger than ourselves, we enlarge our lives. By sharing, we possess more than our small portion. At Canvas time, there are words like pledge and promise and duty. And when we throw around figures like 2% of income, the word tax might come to mind. But another way to look at this as a promise is putting your hopes out. This is what you hope to do in the coming year. And finally, I think it's fitting that we have our kickoff of our pledge on this weekend and this sermon on Groundhog's Day. Our pledge committee will pop out of their holes, and if they are overshadowed by pledge cards, the pledge drive will go away soon. But if not, you can count on 6 more weeks of a flurry of announcements, proddings, and cajolings. Please join in singing our final hymn. That is our life. We sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift, which we are called to use, to build a common good. And may
Grant us the ability to find joy and strength not in the strident call to arms, but in stretching out our arms to grasp our fellow creatures in the striving for justice and truth.
Let us turn to one another and hold each